I almost didn't go. That morning, I sat on the edge of my bed for 20 minutes, staring at my shoes like they had personally offended me. I had planned this day 3 times already, 3 different dates, 3 different excuses I made of myself. Too busy. Bad timing. Maybe next week. But there is no next week when you keep pushing things forward. At some point, next week just becomes never. So I put on my shoes. I grabbed my jacket. And I told myself today was the day I was finally going to say it. Her name is Layla. And just saying her name in my head made my heart do something stupid. We had been together for almost 2 years. 2 years of coffee runs, late-night conversations, and inside jokes that would make zero sense to anyone else. 2 years of her laughing at my terrible cooking, and me pretending I wasn't proud of it anyway. 2 years of small moments that somehow added up to the biggest feeling I had ever carried. And in all that time, I had never once managed to say the thing I actually meant. Not really. Not the way it lived inside my chest. Quiet and certain and completely terrifying. I am not the kind of person who is good with words. I am better with actions. I remember things. I notice when she is tired before she says, so I show up. I stay. But words? Words have always had a way of rearranging themselves right when I need them most, turning something genuine into something that sounds like I copied it off a greeting card at the last second. Still, today was different. I had been rehearsing one line for 3 straight days. Just one. I said it in the shower. I said it while waiting for the bus. I said it so many times that it stopped sounding like words and started sounding like noise. But I kept going because I needed it to feel natural. I needed it to sound like it came from somewhere real, not like I had been practicing it since Tuesday. The cafe I picked was not fancy. It never was. It was a small place we had been going since our first date, tucked between a bookstore and a narrow alleyway in the older part of the city. The kind of place that smelled like warm bread and coffee grounds, where the chairs did not quite match and the music was always slightly too low to recognize. Most people walked right past it. We never did. It became ours without us ever deciding that. Some things just do. Our first date, there was a disaster. By the way, I knocked my coffee off the table within the first 10 minutes. It went everywhere. On me, on the floor, narrowly missing her. I remember the look on her face right before she started laughing. Not a polite laugh. Not the kind people do when they are trying to make you feel better. A real one. Full, uncontrollable, covering her mouth because she could not stop kind of laugh. And instead of wanting to disappear, I laughed too. Because somehow, with her, even the worst moments had a way of turning into something lighter. She chose me after that. That still gets me. I arrived at the cafe early, which was a mistake, because it just gave me more time to sit alone with my thoughts. I picked the table by the window, the one we always ended up at, without ever officially claiming it. I ordered a coffee I did not really want and sat there turning the cup in my hands like it was something I needed to figure out. My leg was bouncing under the table. I checked my phone twice, not because anyone had messaged me, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Outside, a couple walked past with a dog that was clearly in charge of the situation. A kid on a bicycle nearly took out a display sign in front of the bookstore next door. Normal life, just moving along at its usual pace. Completely unaware that I was sitting 10 feet away trying to convince my nervous system to calm down. I went over the line again. I had chosen it carefully, which in hindsight was probably the problem. When you choose something too carefully, it stops sounding like you. It starts sounding like a version of you that has been edited and approved and revised until all the rough edges are gone. And the rough edges are kind of the whole point. They are the part that proves you actually mean it. But I had committed to this. 3 days of rehearsal. I was not walking it back now. The cafe door opened, and I looked up without meaning to. It was not her, just a man in a gray coat ordering something to go. I exhaled and looked back down at my cup. This was the part nobody tells you about. The waiting, the silence before the moment you have been building toward. It sounds like nothing, but it weighs more than almost anything. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Layla. Just 4 words. 5 minutes away, sorry. And I felt something shift in my chest. Not panic, exactly. Something closer to that feeling you get at the top of a hill, right before your feet start moving downhill, and you realize you're already committed to what happens next. I straightened up in my chair. I took one slow breath. I looked at the door, and then she walked in. Her auburn hair was loose around her shoulders, catching the light from the window in a way that made the whole room feel quieter somehow. She had that look she always carried, the one that was somehow relaxed and fully present at the same time, like she belonged exactly where she was no matter where that happened to be. She spotted me before I could rearrange my face into something that looked remotely composed. She waved. I waved back, and every single word I had rehearsed for 3 days dissolved completely. She was still walking toward me, unwinding her scarf, smiling like we had just seen each other yesterday, and also like she was genuinely glad to be here. Both things at once. That was Layla. She had always been able to hold two things at once in a way I never quite could. She sat down across from me. "You look nervous," she said. I opened my mouth, and the line that came out was not the one I had practiced. It was not even close. "My heart only knows your name." That was what I said, out loud, to another human being, in a cafe where other people could hear me. The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds. But I need you to understand that those 2 seconds felt like standing in a hallway waiting for a verdict. My brain, ever helpful, used that time to play back every single choice I had made that led to that exact moment. The rehearsals, the confident decision to say something meaningful, the absolute failure to say anything remotely normal instead. I watched her face. Layla's expression went through 3 things so fast, I almost missed them. Surprise, confusion, and then something cracked open in her face, and the laugh came out. Not a small one, not a gentle, polite. That was sweet kind of laugh. A complete, uncontrolled, both hands over her mouth laugh that shook her shoulders and made her eyes water. The man at the counter glanced over. I stared at my coffee cup. "What," she finally managed, "did you just say to me?" "I practiced it," I said, which somehow made it worse. She laughed harder. I could feel the couple 2 tables away, trying very politely not to look. I picked up my coffee cup just to have something to hold, and set it back down immediately, because my hands had forgotten what to do. Here's the thing about being bad with words. You know it in theory. You have accepted it, filed it away, moved on. But then a moment like this comes along, and the knowing becomes very specific and very loud. I had 3 days, 3 full days. And I opened my mouth and said something that sounded like dialogue from a drama, where everyone speaks in complete sentences and meaningful pauses. But then I started laughing too. Not because it was not embarrassing. It absolutely was. But because her laugh had always done that to me. It was not something I could stay outside of for very long. It pulled you in whether you plan on it or not. And something about sharing the embarrassment made it lighter. The way a bag feels less heavy when someone reaches over and takes one of the handles without being asked. We sat there laughing for a good 30 seconds. Then things settled. Layla wiped the corner of her eye and looked at me. Not the looking through you kind of look. The kind where someone actually stops, focuses, and sees what is there. It only lasted a moment, but something in it was different from a few seconds before. "You practice that?" she asked. Quieter now. "For 3 days," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "And that was the result?" Apparently. She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, and the cafe window rattled faintly in its frame. The music, whatever it was, drifted low underneath everything. And I sat there feeling oddly still, which was strange, because 2 minutes ago, I had been one wrong breath away from disappearing into my jacket. "Why today?" she asked. It was a simple question, the kind that should have had a simple answer. But I found myself actually thinking about it, not reaching for something polished, just sitting with it honestly, because I kept waiting for the right moment, I said. And I realized the right moment was just going to keep not arriving if I kept waiting for it to feel easy. She looked at me for a moment longer. Then she nodded, not in a big way, just a small, quiet nod, the kind that means something landed. I felt the air between us shift slightly, not dramatically, not like a scene in a film where the music swells and the lighting changes, Just a small, real shift, the kind that happens in ordinary places between ordinary people when something true gets said out loud for the first time. You know, she said slowly, picking up her own cup. For someone who says they are bad with words, you manage to say the right thing fairly often. That was not the right thing, I said. That was a disaster. It was both, she said. I did not have a response to that, mostly because she was right. Most things with us were both, somehow, a disaster, and also exactly right. An accident that turned into a memory we kept coming back to. That was kind of the whole story of us, if I was being honest. But then she said something I was not expecting. She set her cup down and looked at the table for a second, and when she looked back up, her expression had changed in a way I could not immediately read. Not bad, not closed, something more like careful, like she was deciding whether to open a door she had been standing in front of for a while. I need to tell you something, too, she said. My stomach moved in a direction I did not fully authorize. Okay, I said. She wrapped both hands around her cup. Outside, a bus went past and someone on the street laughed at something. Normal sounds. Normal afternoon, and yet the table between us suddenly felt like the quietest place in the city. I got offered a job, she said, a really good one. I waited. It is in another city, she added. The words landed one at a time. I heard each one separately, which is not how words usually arrive. Normally they stack up into meaning all at once. This time they came in slow, like each one needed its own space. How far? I asked. For hours, she said. By train. I did not say anything. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I needed a second to figure out which of the many things moving through me was the right one to reach for first. She was watching me, not anxiously, but carefully. I have not said yes yet, she added quietly. And that was the part that stayed with me. Not the job, not the distance, but the fact that she had not said yes yet. And the fact that she was sitting across from me in our cafe, telling me this, on the same afternoon I had just told her my heart only knew her name. Whether that timing was coincidence, I honestly did not know, but it did not feel like one. She had not said yes yet. I kept coming back to those 5 words the entire walk home. The city moved around me the way it always does, loud and indifferent. People heading somewhere with purpose while I drifted along the pavement with my hands in my pockets and my thoughts somewhere back at that cafe table. 4 hours by train. That was not impossible, but it was not nothing either. Distance has a way of making things that feel solid start to feel uncertain. And the last thing I wanted was for us to become uncertain. I did not sleep well that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, running conversations in my head that had not happened yet. I rehearsed what I might say if she took the job. I rehearsed what I might say if she did not. Neither version felt right because both versions were missing the actual most important part, which was what she wanted. Not what I needed her to want. What she actually, genuinely wanted for herself. That was the part one kept getting stuck on. Because here's the thing about loving someone. It is easy when everything is going in the same direction. When your lives are moving at the same pace toward roughly the same place. It gets harder when a door opens for one of you that does not automatically open for the other. And the version of love that only works when things are convenient is not really love at all. I knew that. I believed it. I just had not been tested on it until now. By the next morning, I had made a decision. I was going to ask her to talk, not over a message, in person, because some conversations deserve more than a screen. I called her just after 9. She picked up on the second ring. Can we meet today? I asked. Not the cafe. Somewhere we can actually walk. There was a short pause. The park near the library? She said. Perfect. I said. Noon. I will be there. I hung up and sat with the phone in my hand for a moment. Outside my window, a pigeon landed on a ledge, looked at me with complete disinterest, and left. I understood the feeling. The park was one of those places that existed quietly in the middle of the city, without asking for any attention. Old trees, wide paths, a small pond that always had at least 2 ducks doing absolutely nothing productive. Layla was already there when I arrived, sitting on the bench closest to the water, her auburn hair catching the breeze that came off the surface of the pond. She was looking at the ducks. She did not look worried. She looked like she was thinking. I sat down beside her. We did not say anything for a moment. That was one of the things I had always valued about us. We did not fill silence just to fill it. "Tell me about the job," I said finally. And she did. Properly this time, not the brief version from the cafe yesterday. She told me about the company, what the role was, why it was a kind of opportunity that did not usually come around twice. She had been building towards something like this for years. I could hear it in the way she talked about it. The specific kind of aliveness in her voice that shows up when someone is describing something they actually care about. I listened, all of it, without interrupting. When she finished, she looked at me. "Say something," she said. "I think you should go," I said. She blinked. That was clearly not what she had expected. "I am not saying that because I want you to leave," I added quickly. "I am saying it because everything you just described sounded like something you have been working toward for a long time, and I would never want to be the reason you close a door like that." She was quiet. "But I also need to be honest," I said. 4 hours is not nothing. It is going to be hard sometimes. And I do not want to pretend otherwise just to seem like the easy option. She turned to look at the water. One of the ducks had climbed out onto the bank and was doing something very purposeful with a leaf. We both watched it for a second. "What are you actually asking me?" she said. "I am not asking you anything," I said. "I am telling you that whatever you decide, I am not going anywhere. But I also need to know if you want to try. Because if you do, I am completely in. And if the distance gets hard, we figure out together. That is what together means." She did not respond right away. The breeze moved through the trees above us, and a couple walked past with a stroller, their voices low and easy. Normal afternoon. Normal park. And yet sitting on that bench felt like standing at a crossroads that had no signposts. Then she said something I was not prepared for. "I already turned it down," she said quietly. I turned to look at her. "What?" "This morning, before you called." She exhaled slowly. "I sat with it all night, and I turned it down." I did not know what to say. "Not because of you," she added, and she turned to face me properly now. "I want to be clear about that. Not because of you. Because when I actually imagined being there in that new city, doing that job, the thing I kept feeling was not excitement. It was just tiredness. And I have learned to pay attention to that." There was a long pause. "You did not have to do that," I said. "I know," she said. "That is kind of the point." We sat with that for a moment. The duck had returned to the water and was now gliding along like it had resolved something important. And then, without planning it, I started laughing. Quietly at first, then more fully, because the entire situation had just done something completely unexpected, and I did not have a better response. She looked at me like I had briefly lost my mind. "I spent all night preparing to be supportive about a decision you had already made," I said. She smiled. "How did that go?" "Surprisingly well, I thought." She laughed. And just like that, the weight that had been sitting between us since yesterday lifted. Not because the conversation had been easy, but because we had walked through it honestly and come out the other side still sitting next to each other on a bench by a pond, watching a duck do its best. But I could tell something else was still sitting with her. She had gone quiet again. Thoughtful, not sad but careful, like someone who has set one thing down and realized there is still something else in their hands. "There is one more thing," she said. I looked at her, and the way she said it told me this was the part she had been working up to all along. "I have been thinking about us," she said. Not in a bad way, but honestly. The park was still doing its quiet afternoon thing around us. Somewhere behind us a kid was feeding birds with a level of enthusiasm that suggested this was the best moment of his week. The sky was the pale blue that shows up in late afternoon when the day has not decided to end yet. And I was sitting very still, giving her all the space she needed to say whatever came next. "I love you," she said. "I want to say that first so the rest does not sound like something it is not." "Okay," I said, "but I think I have been waiting for you to show me something," she continued. "Not a grand gesture, not a speech, just—" She paused, searching for the word. "Certainty. I think I needed to know you were certain." I let that land, because she was right, and I knew she was right. I had always been more comfortable showing up through actions than through words. I remembered things. I planned things. I stayed. But I had never once looked directly at her and said, without any awkwardness or fumbling or accidental poetry, that I was certain, that this was not something I was figuring out, that I already knew. I am certain, I said. She looked at me. I have been certain for a long time, I continued. And I know I did not always say things the right way. Yesterday was proof of that. But the way I feel about you is not something I am still working out. It is already worked out. It has been for a while. She was quiet. The line I said at the cafe, I added, was embarrassing. I know that, but it was also the most honest thing I have said in years. Because that is genuinely what it feels like. Like you are the only name my heart actually knows how to say. Something in her face softened completely. Not the polite kind of soft. The real kind. The kind that does not happen because someone said the right thing, but because they said the true thing. That is still kind of dramatic, she said. I practiced it for 3 days. I reminded her. She laughed. And this time there was something warmer in it. Something that felt less like laughing at the situation, and more like laughing because the situation had somehow, against all reasonable odds, come out okay. We stayed on that bench for another hour, not talking about anything important for most of it. She told me about the colleague who had forwarded her the job listing, a woman named Priya, who apparently had very strong opinions about where people's careers should go. I told her about the pigeon that had judged me outside my window that morning. We talked about nothing and everything the way you do when the big thing's been said, and the air is easier again. That evening we ended up back at the cafe, not because we planned it. We just drifted there, the way you drift toward a place that has always meant something. We took the table by the window. The coffee was still average. The chairs still did not quite match. The music was still too low to name. She ordered for both of us without asking, because she already knew what I would choose. I did not point that out. I just let it be one of those small things that prove something bigger. We sat there as the street outside went from busy to quiet, from afternoon to evening, from the world rushing past to the world slowing down. And I thought about how none of it had gone the way I planned. Not the line, not the conversation about the job, not the bench or the ducks, or the things she said that I was not prepared for. But here we were, still at the same table, still choosing each other, still turning the awkward and the imperfect into something that felt, against all expectations, like exactly enough. She looked up from her cup and caught me looking at her. "Stop," she said, but she was smiling. "I am not doing anything," I said. "You have that look," she said. "What look?" "The one you get when you are about to say something you have been rehearsing." I laughed. She laughed. The cafe carried the sound of it the same way it always had. And I thought, not for the first time, that this was it. Not perfect, not cinematic, not the version of love that looks good from the outside and feels hollow up close. Just this, her laugh, our table, the average coffee, the shared understanding that we had walked through something real and come out the other side still wanted to be here. My heart only knew her name. It always had. And now, sitting across from her in the place where we had always made our best accidental memories, I was not just certain of it. I was home,